Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of 7 Studio Ave. I'm joined today by Jalen.
Hey guys, I'm happy to be back.
Yeah. Just first off, apologies that we weren't here last week. But to be fair, neither was the U.S. government, so make
Can't
of that
hold
what
us
you will.
accountable.
So, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. First and foremost, we both saw a very interesting theory about a character that could appear in Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
So, this is all just rumors and speculation, but if you want to go into Endgame with fresh ears, maybe just don't listen. Again, just pure speculation, but who knows? We've been right before. So, the character is that of Black Knight, who's basically just this guy who inherits a castle with this magic sword called the Ebony Blade, and yeah, he fights with the Avengers. The basis for this theory comes off a few things. One, we know that the Ebony Blade almost appeared in Doctor Strange as an Easter egg, but they decided not to use it, which could indicate that they have later plans for it. Two, a while back, one of the producers of Ant-Man and the Wasp pointed out that there are civilizations inside the quantum realm, so there are different theories that he could come from one of those, like he's time displaced. The third theory, and what really got us thinking about this, was Marvel has this tendency to reissue comics that pertain to what they're essentially doing in the MCU. And recently they reissued some old school Avengers comics, one of which involved Black Knight, and the title of it was Endgame. So, do you remember what that comic pertained around, Jalen?
I actually do not.
So it focused on this character called Kang the Conqueror, who's more of a Fantastic Four villain, but we'll get into that later. And it involves him sort of time hopping, and Black Knight being the only Avenger to survive and following Kang the Conqueror through time. So that sounds very similar to what we speculate about Avengers Endgame, insofar as it's the heroes hopping through time.
There's also a lot of people have wondered who will be the villain in Avengers Endgame because we know Thanos was the villain in Avengers Infinity War. However, he accomplished his goal, and he there's no reason for him to be involved essentially, unless maybe he feels regret. That's possible, but he wouldn't be the villain in that case. So many people have wondered: is there a new villain that's going to show up for Avengers Endgame or not? Some people said Kang the Conqueror. I personally doubt it, but it just kind of adds into the whole aspect of what is Marvel doing with their marketing strategy right now? What are they trying to tell us almost? But on other news in terms of Avengers, there's a theory that the villain for Avengers Endgame will end up being a more evil Thanos from the past. What do you think about that, Jeff?
I think it's very interesting. So we've seen from different toy releases and concept arts that he'll have this sort of double-bladed staff, which is, It almost looks like a helicopter propeller. But what I find most interesting about that is when the toys started coming out for Infinity War last year, there was a toy of Thanos, came in a 2-pack with an Iron Man action figure, and it was Thanos all armored up and with this double-bladed sword. We also see a very similar sword in the Lego set. Now, there's this weird relationship between toy companies and movie marketers, because oftentimes toys will be made based off of concept art. That's why the Marvel Legends figure of Ant-Man doesn't look like Ant-Man in his film. It's because it was based off a previous concept art. So that says to me that this was a concept that they had for Infinity War, but maybe they decided to push it back and use it for Endgame. Because you have to remember, up until like 2-3 years ago, it was supposed to be Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2.
Yeah.
So it's just very interesting to see. There's also some precedent, in the comics of a more evil Thanos. In a recent comic, actually, called Old King Thanos, it's a version of Thanos from the future where he's essentially killed all other beings in the universe, except for this cosmic Ghost Rider, who's his herald, and he brings young Thanos to his future, and they duke it out, and it's a really interesting story. But the important part is there's precedent for two Thanoses existing in the same place, and one of them being more evil.
Specifically, the theory would state that because, and we've talked about this before in the podcast, is that there's a large possibility that the Avengers, the original Avengers, will be traveling through time, back in time, and specifically to the events of the first Avengers film. And so there's a lot of talk, as you know, the first time we got to look at Thanos was in the end credit scene for Avengers, for the first Avengers film. And so there's talk of, and we learn that he's kind of like the guy who was orchestrating the whole Chitauri army invasion. And the thought is that basically the Avengers from the future would be coming to the past to then go fight the younger Thanos so that he would never even end up getting the Infinity Stones in the first place. I think it'd be really interesting and cool to see them fly maybe through the portal that is opened up over New York and fly into space to attack Thanos. I think that'd be very interesting.
And that would also tie back to, again, people always point to Doctor Strange saying, Tony, we're in the Endgame, as where they got the title for Avengers Endgame. But in Avengers Age of Ultron, which my opinion is underrated, but we'll probably do an episode about that another time, in Avengers Age of Ultron, we hear Tony, while they're in Stark Tower, talking about how they're standing 300 feet from below the portal. We're the Avengers. We can bust arms dealers all the live long day, but up there, that's the end game. So, like Jalen was saying, it'd be really nice for them to tie that all back together and bring it back to where the Avengers began.
Mm-hmm. And was it Tony or Thor who had the vision of all the Avengers being dead?
That was Tony.
Yeah, and that image looks like it's in space.
Yeah. What's really interesting is all the Avengers that we see dead there, they're the original 6. Those are all the ones that survived the snap.
Exactly. So
I just remember when the Avengers Age of Ultron trailer came out, we were in 7th grade maybe? And
Age of Ultron?
Age of Ultron, yeah.
No, we were in 7th because it came out in 2015.
Yeah.
So we would have been in like 8th or 9th grade.
It was definitely 8th grade then. Because I remember talking
grade,
to... I'll tell you later why I remember that. But anyway, and I just remember the big moment of that trailer was it pans over a shot of Captain America's shield being broken. And we were all just like, oh my gosh, Cap's shield is broken. This is crazy. And then 5 minutes into Age of Ultron, turns out it's just an illusion. So the lesson to be learned from that is you have to take everything we see in the trailers with a grain of salt. There are absolutely no certainties to any of this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we talked about that previously with one of the theories for Infinity War in our last episodes, or not our last episode, 2 episodes ago. So yeah. Anytime we're analyzing these trailers, it's good to remember that this is all speculation and that the real substance comes from when we watch the movie and review it.
Right. So, Endgame comes out this April. We're all excited. Another movie coming out this April, Shazam.
Oh, yeah.
We got a new, I wouldn't say trailer. It's like 50 seconds, so it's longer than a TV spot.
Promotional clip.
Yeah, promotional clip. But it's really cool. We see him flying around, and it just reinforces the idea that this is going to be a fun movie.
Yeah. Something else that comes out in April that we're all really excited for, Game of Thrones, the final season. They've definitely been keeping everything under wraps. There was, though, that one promotional clip.
Right.
Actually,
walking through the tombs of Winterfell.
I have a lot to say about that, in fact. So, again, it's a trailer, and we can't tell how accurate everything is, but it will tell. They may have been giving us some clues. So, first we see Jon Snow, Sansa, and Arya walking through what I believe they call it the crypt. I think it's under Winterfell.
Yeah,
I know that.
It's where all the statues
Yeah,
are.
all the and you see some of the dead Starks, their statues.
Hear voiceovers from Ned Stark and their mother.
And when they get to the end of the hallway, the 3 living Starks now see their own statues, which is almost inferring that they're going to die and be buried there. However, it's very they definitely do this on purpose. Bran is also a living Stark. However, he is not there. But there is one scene where a feather goes from the hands of one of the statues and hits the ground. And my thought is that represents Bran because he's known as the Three-Eyed Raven. Now, the next significant thing is that
We see the feather freeze over
we
as
see the feather
cold
freeze over
approaches.
as the cold approaches from the Night King, essentially.
There is that one theory that Bran
Is
is
connected.
the Night King.
He is the Night King or is connected to the Night King in some
Right.
way. Remember, he was touched by the Night King, so they may have some sort of connection that Bran doesn't know about, and Bran may be the reason that the Night King maybe kills his siblings. And the last thing I would say that I think a lot of people overlooked is their location. The fact that they're in the crypt and that the ice is coming from there, you have to remember the Night King can revive people who've been dead and make them White Walkers. That is where all the dead Starks are buried. So we may be seeing some of the old Starks that died in previous seasons coming back as White Walkers, and I think that'd be very interesting to see.
Oh, that would be almost like the Night King using psychological warfare.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if he would keep their personalities but just make them fight for him or not. That'd be interesting to see. Ned Stark, Robb Stark.
I'm also really interested to see because I always thought that they were going to do something with the fact that Jon Snow was dead and came back to life. Like, I know they did the whole blood magic thing, and I know when he's first revived, one of the guys is like, well, your eyes aren't blue. But I always thought they were going to explore the idea of that more, that maybe he has some connection to the White Walkers that we don't know about. Like, maybe because he was dead, he isn't affected by them as much.
Isn't there still that prophecy about that one person who it's like similar to like your stereotypical like the chosen one kind of
Right.
prophecy? I forget the names of all. It's been
I know it has to do with the Lord of Light.
yeah, it's been so long since, and a lot of people have speculated who it is. Some people have said Daenerys is this person. Some people have said Jon is this person, and so on and so forth. But it's been 2017 is when the last season came out, so it's been a while since I've been thinking about Game of Thrones. So I don't know like the exact name of the prophecy from the show, but it's definitely alluded to that maybe part of the reason of why Jon Snow was actually able to come back to life. I'm really interested to see the Red Lady, like the one who revived.
Yeah.
Her character was always so weird to me because she always did these weird things. And then there was the one in season 6. There's the one scene where you see her like as an old lady. It's like naked old lady. It's so weird, and they never address it. And then she leaves in season 7, and we don't know where she went. And I just find it so like odd. Like maybe she'll come back and maybe they'll address that, or maybe she won't, and they'll talk more about her in the spin-off series that they're gonna do because it has been confirmed it's a prequel to Game of Thrones. But I don't know. That character was always so weird to me. Bless you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
And okay, I think that's what we have about that. We want to talk about Spider-Man trailer.
Yes, Spider-Man Far From Home. So, first and foremost, I have just a general problem with Marvel like announcing this movie and marketing for it, because one of the things that Infinity War was praised for was Tom Holland's performance as, spoiler alert, Peter Parker was turning to dust in Tony Stark's arms. So that sort of emotional punch is really undercut when a week later you have Tom Holland on Instagram talking about Far From Home and announcing the movie title.
Yeah.
And it just plays into this idea that, oh, Marvel, that's just kids' movies. They don't have depth. They don't care about death. Which, again, I don't think is personally true. But there are some, like any rumor, there are elements of truth to it. And this does not help Marvel's image with that.
Yeah.
That being said, this was a great trailer.
It was. It was very fun. It made me laugh. The one part of Flash Thompson was a really good joke. If you want to, I'm not going to repeat the joke. If you want to see it, go look at the trailer. It's at the very end.
It's at the very end. And it's consistent with his character from the comics. He
It is.
loves Spider-Man.
Hates Peter Parker.
So, the villains that we see, there are a few different theories. Because we've sort of received conflicting information. Like, the producers and Feige have said that the villains are going to be this group called the Elementals, which, to my understanding, are this sort of ancient alien group. There's Zephyr, who controls air, Magnum, who controls ground, Hydron, who controls water, and Hellfire, who controls fire. But there are things to suggest that they may not be the Elementals in the comics. Like, At one point, we see a license plate, and the numbers and letters on that license plate correspond to the first appearance of Hydro Man in the Spider-Man comics. Hydro Man is one of the lesser known of Spider-Man's rogues, but he's more well known than the Elementals. And you could theoretically match one of these Elementals up with a more known Spider-Man villain, like Sandman or Molten Man. So I have a feeling that if they do this one thing, that's how they're going to incorporate it. Like, they're going to do sort of like a fusion of those characters, which the movies have done in the past.
Personally, I don't think it's the Elementals because Spider-Man is the route they took with Spider-Man Homecoming, and I think they're taking with Far From Home, is a more down-to-earth Marvel movie, not about space or magic or anything like that. So to have characters like the Elementals seems a little bit off from what they're trying to go with the vibe for a Spider-Man movie.
I know fellow co-host Logan has this theory that the Elementals that we see are illusions produced by Mysterio. Sort of like Syndrome from The Incredibles. He's using them to make himself look like a hero. Which, speaking of Mysterio, he looks pretty good.
He does, looks really good. And I love how Jake Gyllenhaal is really, like, I love when the actors really get into their roles and are happy and, like, promoting on social media, and, like, you can tell that they enjoy having this character as, some actors will play a character and then never address it. Like
they're not just doing this for a paycheck.
Yeah, exactly. He seems like he really enjoys it, which is really happy to see as a fan.
Right. We also see the return of Nick Fury. Which, first of all, how does Spider-Man know who Nick Fury is?
Well,
he's supposed to be like the super spy director of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's different theories where people
is Nick Fury in Endgame?
He might be.
If he's in Endgame, maybe he meets him there.
Maybe, yeah. But again, I don't know. It's just, I've been so focused on Avengers Endgame that I haven't really, I don't want to say I haven't cared, but my interest hasn't been with the Spider-Man Far From Home. And this trailer did a great job of making me more interested in it as a film.
I'm excited to see the kind of romance that's building between Zendaya's character MJ and Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
Right. It seems like they have a lot of chemistry.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they do a good job with that. I don't think the romance in the MCU has been particularly good, in my opinion. It's always been kind of to the side, and I think with these two, they have a chance to make it really strong.
Tom Holland does the perfect awkward teenager.
Yeah.
Which, as an awkward teenager, is really refreshing to see.
Yeah. I really liked the small comedic moment they had in the trailer. Again, go watch it. I'm not going to repeat it.
Right.
But yeah, it seemed pretty good.
So yeah.
All right. I think now is a good time. We're going to tell you guys, if you enjoy enjoy our podcast and you enjoy the content that we've been providing for you, then make sure to go check out our Instagram at 7studioav. Go to our website at 7studioav.weebly.com. Also visit us on Twitter, and if you're on our website, subscribe to our mailing list.
We'd love to hear what your guys' theories are about Avengers Endgame, or what you thought of the new Spider-Man trailer.
Yeah, we love interacting with different fans from around the world online, so about anything, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Game of Thrones, we love to just talk about that stuff. So yeah, give us any, maybe there's, for our next Versus episode, you'd like to see two people duke it out. So
I'm putting together the list.
I'll duke it out with somebody.
All right.
So those were a couple movies we're excited for. Let's talk about some of the movies that were The one that comes to mind is Fox's New Mutants film.
Yep, not even following anything about that. Don't care about that. I don't even care about Dark Phoenix. So
yeah. There was a trailer for that a couple months ago, but I cannot remember any of it. So
wasn't that the one that had
it's got Anya Taylor-Joy and Maisie Williams.
Yeah, Maisie Williams. Yeah.
I
remember it was really dark. It was really dark. The trailer.
Yeah, but so there's rumors that they could just sell this to Hulu, just put it directly on a streaming service. Which part of me is just you're really just releasing this for the sake of it. But another part's yeah, just end on Dark Phoenix. because that'd be a nice bookend to this crap show that you've been calling an X-Men film franchise.
Yeah, definitely.
We were talking the other day that it would be really funny if they just don't beat her, and because either way, the rights are going to Marvel. There is no sequel that they could do for Dark Phoenix. At the end of the day, this is their last shot. I say just have some fun with it. There's probably going to be an emotional scene between Cyclops and Jean where Cyclops is like, Jean, I know there's still good in you. You don't have to do this. And I really want to see her just go like, no. Then smash cut to CGI Earth hurtling into the sun. That's how the movie ends. Just have,
I would clap, stand up, and give a round of applause.
That's how this ends. Cut, yeah. Cyclops is like, Jean, no, they're still good in you. Cut to Jean Grey saying no. Cut to James McAvoy shouting no. Smash cut to Earth hurtling into the sun.
Honestly, I don't know how strong she is in the comics. I know she's really powerful. However, they can do whatever they want with the character in the movie.
I'm sure she does destroy an alien planet in the comics.
Oh,
so
okay.
This isn't even out of the realm of possibility.
I think it'd be, honestly, really good decision, since they're not going to get a sequel, to have her literally kill everyone on Earth and be left alone and realize what she's done is terrible, and then that just be the end of the movie. I think that'd be pretty powerful.
But that's not as funny as the Earth hurtling into the sun.
Yeah, but
I'm looking at that's a deeper, probably better ending. I'm looking at this from what's the most ridiculous and entertaining thing they could do. But that's coming out in June. It was originally slated to come out in a month from now. It was February 27th. But literally 2 days after the trailer came out, they push it back to June. That does not bode well.
Ouch.
It's honestly just a waiting game until the X-Men and Fantastic Four can go home to Marvel. I recently saw a pretty good meme where it was Kevin Feige's face over Apocalypse from X-Men Apocalypse. And in that movie, Apocalypse has the line where he's like, everything they built will fall, and from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one. And that's essentially what Kevin Feige is going to do with the X-Men in the MCU.
Yeah, hopefully.
So, we've talked about some movies. We've talked about some movies we're pretty excited for. Let's talk about a movie that we saw, and I don't know about you, but I love this.
All right, so right now, if you have not seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, you may want to click away. We are going to be reviewing it with spoilers. So
spoilers on.
So yeah, spoilers on. All right. What a great movie, honestly.
I think this is probably the best Spider-Man movie.
Honestly, it might be. I'm biased. I've always really liked the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. I really like Peter Parker as well. I think, honestly, it may have just been the fact that Peter Parker has just been done so many times that when I heard about Miles Morales and knowing he was a very solid character that wasn't so out there like some of the other Spider-Man versions, I think I really liked him, as well as I always thought as a kid, I thought his abilities were really cool, since the fact he could turn invisible and these electric shocks and things.
And I think they incorporated that into it really well.
Yeah, definitely.
What I loved is the fact that they don't treat the audience like an idiot. They treat us like we know who Spider-Man is. Because most of the time, I would say that Spider-Man is probably one of the most recognizable superheroes. There's 3 superheroes that you could go to anyone and they'd recognize, like Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man.
Exactly. Yeah, they're the big 3.
And so they definitely play on the fact that we know who Spider-Man is, we know his weakness, we know his origin story. He has one of the most well-established origin stories in comics, and they are able to do that to introduce all these Spider-Men in the course of what? They each get 30 seconds?
Yeah, it was done really well. I mean, the movie had a lot of... What I liked about it is they were very bold in terms of their animation, some of the effects they did, some of the dialogue they chose, and the way they cut it was bold. Like you said, with their quick little origin story things. Right. It was bold, but it was done well.
It pans out so it looks like it's a comic book. It's a really neat artistic choice.
I really liked that.
And let's talk a minute about the animation, because another film that came out last year, which was pretty good animated superhero film, was Incredibles 2. Spider-Verse is leagues ahead of Incredibles 2.
And specifically, not even for quality, but for artistic decision and choice, because
Right.
it's different than honestly anything that I've ever seen before, and it just looks really, the colors look really interesting.
They
and
do this thing in the background with dots where I forget the technical name of it, but it's something that they actually do in comics to make it look like the pages.
I hear
full.
they hired a lot of people for to animate this
And
film.
it's even things like when you see Spider-Man shoot a web, there's a quick little thwip word. So it's like the little details like that.
And not to mention that they went into a lot of detail with that, because even the placement of these words were very specific. One time when he's falling off a building, he's like, "Whoa!" And you see those letters panning behind him as he's falling down the building, and it's like parallel to the building. It's really interesting.
There's a part where someone gets hit with a bagel, and when it hits them, it says bagel. It's like little details like that most people are never going to see. But I just love the fact that there's so much care and
Yeah,
detail into this
definitely.
movie.
And speaking of other things they took a lot of care with was the voice acting and the soundtrack.
Right.
I thought the voice acting was done really well. I heard people in the theater loved that Liam Neeson did Spider-Man Noir.
No, that's Nicolas Cage.
Sorry, Nicolas Cage. I don't know why I got those two mixed up, but Nicolas Cage. Yeah, people loved that about that character.
Yeah. Sometimes I let matches burn all the way down to my fingertips just to feel something. Anything. Yeah, it's just
That's
great
great.
stuff.
Yeah, the characterization was really good. I think did they win any awards for the soundtrack? I'm not
They
sure.
won, not soundtrack, I know they won Golden Globe for Best Animated Picture. And if they don't win the Oscar for Best Animated Picture, then I will have lost all faith in the Academy. I don't have that much faith in the Academy anyway. I think they're pretentious. But they would have to be an idiot to give it to Incredibles 2 or whatever Japanese film made the entry this year for animated film.
I'm not sure. Did what?
I don't know, really.
Yeah.
But honestly, this is just such a pleasure to watch. The way the colors pop, the fluidity of the movement
Yeah.
is something that I notice. Because
Yeah.
it works especially well for Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Because in order to make Spider-Man do the things he does in the comics on screen with a live actor, you would have to, for the most part, it's mostly CGI. And while CGI is great, there's always going to be that feeling of a disconnect. But because this is animation, they can make Spider-Man as nimble and agile as he is in the comics. And it's just great to see.
Yeah, and in terms of the animation, the action looks great, of course, and fluid and really interesting, and it pops out. However, they also do a really good job of displaying the emotions within the characters' faces and matching it with the voice acting to create like an emotional connection with the characters that I was really impressed by. When, bless you, Jeff.
Sorry, guys. Allergies.
And like one of my favorite scenes that I think like it really got me emotionally was when Miles' father comes to visit him when he's just standing outside his room, and he's talking to Miles, and he seems like he just like the emotion that's conveyed in that scene is really, really good, and it touched me, and it was relatable to a typical father-son relationship, and everything about the emotion portrayed in that movie was done really well.
Yeah. Even some of the stuff, like, what really got me was, again, spoilers throughout this, the original Peter Parker's death.
Yeah,
Like,
the one thing I want to say,
It's like a Spider-Man that we see for like 5 minutes. I want to talk more about him, but he's killed by Kingpin, and then there's this great like sad montage of like everyone looking at the news, and the soundtrack picks up, and we see his funeral, and I'm feeling pretty sad. And then there's the Stan Lee cameo where he's like, "I'm really gonna miss him. Me and him were friends, you know," and that just got me. I'm not gonna lie, I was teary-eyed.
yeah. When I went for the scene where he died, the one thing I was surprised about is, so I know that Kingpin is this like freakishly huge, strong guy, and of course they exaggerate that in the movie
This
for the
man is like
animation.
the width of 3 refrigerators.
Yeah. However, Spider-Man is still super strong and can do things like he could punch a car or do something, or like how he has stopped trains. So I was really surprised when what killed him was Kingpin like slamming down on his body. Like that I didn't really believe personally.
Well, he was also already
I
pretty
know he was
beaten.
already injured, but still I just don't believe that he would have been able to kill Spider-Man with that one hit. Like I didn't believe that personally.
That was a really great scene where he's dying, and uh, Kingpin actually does have some emotional depth himself that plays into his arc.
Yeah, that
But
was good too, yeah.
I liked Liev Schreiber's voice performance, like the one line where he's like, "It's not all. Sometimes it's not all about the money, Spider-Man." It's like there's a hint of depth under him.
Yeah,
It's
so
like
he's
even
not
though
just
he's the villain, yeah. But so, I mean, I believed his death. He was already beaten pretty bad. That particle collider pretty much already fell on him and killed him. So
Yeah, that's true. I also thought something that's done really well was the relationship between Miles and his uncle, and the big reveal for that. His uncle being what's his character's name?
the Prowler.
Yeah, the Prowler. That was really good. That was done really well.
That's one of those things where being a comics fan is sort of detrimental because it spoils that
Yeah,
reveal. But
yeah.
what was great is I saw this with a couple friends who aren't massive nerds like I am, and so it was great to see them like put it together.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk after the show. But so anyway, can we talk about the Prowler for a second? Because I really want to see Donald Glover as Prowler in the MCU because he is already that character in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Yeah. I was recently on Reddit and I was proposing the idea of having Miles Morales in the third Spider-Man movie for the MCU. I personally I thought they could. I mean, I don't disagree with their decision to have Peter Parker be in the MCU, and I don't disagree with. And I'm glad that they at least made a reference towards Miles being in the MCU due to Donald Glover's character. However, I definitely thought when they announced that Spider-Man was going to be in the MCU that they could have had it just be Miles Morales in the first place. But the alternative is to have Peter and Miles meet each other, and I think it'd be really interesting. Like, imagine if Miles is like a freshman in high school in the high school that Peter goes to,
That'd be pretty good.
Peter's a senior and he's helping him out because he sees himself in Miles. That'd be really interesting and really a really cool relationship there. And then maybe, just maybe, Peter dies again,
Yeah.
but permanently.
Or does he? Ugh.
Yeah.
But so, speaking of Peter Parkers, I love Jake Gyllenhaal's Peter Parker. Or, no, sorry. Jake Johnson. He plays the older Peter Parker.
Oh yeah. He does a really good
There
job
was
with
such
that.
great contrast between him and Chris Pine's Peter Parker, which, for the record, they collected the fourth Chris.
What do you mean?
So, Chris Evans, Captain America,
Oh yeah.
Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. Now they've got Chris Pine as Spider-Man. Marvel's done it. They've got the four Chris's.
I just imagine that scene of Thanos putting the last Infinity Stone in the Infinity Gauntlet.
It's just Chris Pine's face. Oh. But so, yeah. So, we see that Spider-Man's origin, where he's like, I got bit by a radioactive spider, but I saved the city, and I fell in love, and everything's going great. And then we see the Jake Johnson, Peter B. Parker, who's like, got bit by a radioactive spider, I saved the city, and I saved the city again, and again. I broke my back. I split up with my wife, I buried Aunt May, but I took it like a champ. Smash cut to him crying in the shower. It's just great.
Yeah. Honestly, I think one of the best scenes in all the Spider-Man films that exist today was in that movie, and for me, it was when Miles like finally becomes
The leap of faith.
yeah, his own like Spider-Man, and he goes to visit Aunt May, and she sets him up with some web shooters. He grabs one of the suits and he spray paints it. So I thought it was a really nice touch compared to the original version of Miles Morales, because he just has a black and red suit, but this time it's the backstory to the suit is that he spray painted it, which is
something he did with his uncle.
yeah, which is something he did with his uncle, and that he was passionate about his art. So I thought that was
And
a
that's
really
when
cool
he was
touch.
also bit by the spider. When
Exactly,
they were spray
yeah.
painting. So it comes full circle
Comes
with
full
him
circle. It's really nice.
becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah, and then he jumps off the roof, and you get some narration in the back from the older version of Spider-Man telling him that he just got to take a leap of faith. So he jumps off the building, and you have slow-mo. The graphics look amazing.
The shot's reversed, so
Yeah.
he's not falling through the screen.
He's-
He's rising.
Yeah, exactly.
And the last time I legitimately got chills in a theater was Infinity War. It's right before Black Panther's charge.
Mhm.
This scene in Spider-Verse gave me chills.
Yeah.
The way the soundtrack
The
and the
musical
visuals
score, yeah.
they complement each other so well that it just invokes that sense of awe.
You really feel for him throughout the movie because he's awkward, and he's this awkward boy who's
He's trying his best to be Spider-Man.
He's
but
trying his best. He's trying his best with girls. He's trying his best with school, his family. He's trying his best to be Spider-Man. So for him to finally kind of like gain some confidence, you really feel for him. And the music and the animation and everything all at once just really does very nicely in this scene. And it was epic, honestly. So I was really happy to see that the movie was able to do that well.
Yeah. So, what did you think of Kingpin's plan? I thought it was interesting. I thought it was better than I'm going to try and rule the city sort of thing.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty good.
But the one problem I have with it is, imagine if he got like the version of his wife and kid from like Spider-Man Noir's universe, so they're just black and white. Or what
That'd
if he
be
got
interesting.
like the ones from
Spider Ham,
Yeah, what would it be like?
animals, yeah.
Oh, what's an animal pun that could go with that?
You think about that, Jeff.
You're an animal.
That's not a pun.
You know what? I have nothing else to do with my time.
Should we talk a little bit about Spider-Ham?
He was voiced well. I think he wasn't too corny.
I like that they stuck to his comic book origin, where he's not a pig that was bit by a spider. He was a spider that was bit by a radioactive pig. And so I thought it was great that they actually like stick to that. And again, I appreciate it in a superhero movie when they lean into the comic bookness of it. Like one of my problems with The Dark Knight, as much as it's a phenomenal film technically, it doesn't feel like a superhero film to me, which
That's
is fine.
true.
It
That
doesn't
is
have
true.
to. It can be a different kind of film. But I love it when like a comic book movie acknowledges that it's a comic book and just leans hard into that. That's why I love Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's why I love Aquaman. As ridiculous as they are, they're staying true to their medium.
Yeah. It's self-humility almost. It's good.
And this movie just plays with that and does it so great.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. It's interesting how they have Spider-Woman is Gwen Stacy, right? That's how.
Yeah.
So Spider-Woman, and they have
That's been a thing for a while.
yeah, I know. But so they have Spider-Woman as Gwen Stacy, and then the older Peter Parker and Miles are kind of like the three like main characters, sort of like the Spider-Verse, and then they have like these three kind of comical side versions of
Penny
Spider-Man.
Parker, Spider-Man Noir, which was voiced by Nicolas Cage, and Spider-Ham, voiced by John Mulaney.
Yeah.
Now, I know they originally thought about incorporating more Spider people, but I think this is a good amount to start with.
Yeah.
I hope they explore more in the...
Hopefully sequel. Yeah. And
'Cause-
speaking of the sequel, the end credit scene shows what's his name?
Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, what's Miguel O'Hara, that's his name. Yeah.
Yeah,
And he has like a device that actually will allow him to travel through.
And he does the famous Spider-Man pointing meme.
Oh, that was great.
I really hope we see more of him in the...
Yeah, Spider-Man 2099 is a really cool character, and I
And
think
I like
his
Oscar
design is
Isaac
awesome.
voicing him.
Exactly, yeah.
So what are some other Spider people that you want to see? Because I have a couple.
Personally, I heard about a scene that was cut from the movie just because they thought it was a little too much, but it was a scene that had Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and of course,
Tobey Maguire.
and Tobey Maguire all together in a scene, and I think that would just honestly be amazing. Maybe not like maybe they don't have them in the story, but as like an end credit scene, I think that'd be cool. I would like to see maybe some of like the old version, like versions of Spider-Man from shows that I watched.
Right.
When I was a kid, like maybe Ultimate Spider-Man, that was a pretty cool show. I'd also like to see the one version of Spider-Man where it's Doc Ock is taking control of his body.
Superior Spider-Man.
Superior Spider-Man, that'd be really cool to see.
I think it'd be cool to see Spider-Punk, because
Yeah,
he has a really
yeah,
interesting
definitely.
design that they could do a lot with. The one in particular that I'd love to see how they tackle is it's like the Spider-Man of Earth 1117.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get this. So Peter Parker, grade A student. One time he's visiting. It's not Oscorp, but it's a lab like that, and he accidentally falls into like a colony of radioactive spiders.
Jeez.
They devour him, but because they're radioactive, they're being hit with like radioactive particles. They absorb his consciousness, so they think that they are Peter Parker, and so then they fight crime as Spiders Man, which is
So
just
are they? Wait. So what do they look like? I'm about to look this up right now.
so he looks like it's a Spider-Man. It's a Spider-Man costume, but it's just thousands of spiders in it. So it's just thousands of spiders in the shape of a man.
What's the name of this character again?
Look up Spiders Man.
You know which spider I'd like to see? Spider podcast host.
Oh wow, I see that. That is weird.
Yeah. So I think that'd be like a great reveal, because he just looks like Spider-Man. But if he like pulls the mask off, it's just thousands of
gosh.
spiders.
Another version of Spider-Man I would love to see in the movie is the Insomniac Games version of Spider-Man.
We actually see his suit in like the
Yeah.
Spider Cave.
Yeah, we do. I thought that was really cool. I played that game and I loved it. So I really like the design of that suit. So that'd be cool to see. Anything else you have to say about the movie, Jeff?
Loved it.
What rating would you give it?
No, easily 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I would give it. Yeah. 10
Just
out of
one
10,
more thing
yeah.
is, probably my favorite joke in the whole movie comes before any of the actual scenes. It's right at the beginning. It flashes up on screen, approved by the Comics Code Authority. Because, like, that relates to this whole weird thing in comic book history where for a while child psychologists were like, these comics are too violent. And so
I'll show you.
comics had to be approved by the Comics Code Authority. But then in like the 90s, it became the cool thing to not be approved by them. And so the Comics Code Authority seal just has this weird and interesting history with comic books. And I appreciate that. It's just the appreciation to the amount of detail that they put in.
Yeah.
Hope to see more. I hope to definitely see a sequel of this. They
Yeah,
would
me
be
too.
absolute idiots to not. All right. So, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's all I have for today.
I think so. So again, guys, be sure to contact us, whether that be through the Instagram, website. Again, those are at 7 Studio Ave.
Thanks for listening today, guys.
And we'll see you in 7.
See you in 7.